All right, recording. All right, so this is last day update regarding the prep sheets and some functionalities that I've made. So before I go, I will give you a little bit of a update on the changes. So if we are in sort and filter, this is going to be the first little change that I've made. If we were to run sort and filter before, this is what the output would look like if we had HCl, NaOH, and nitric in this chemicals to make a filter for in sort and filter. I guess to make a filter, or I guess to filter for and sort and filter. You can rename that whatever you want, doesn't matter. Anyways, if these are the ones that they're chemicals of interest, I guess that would be what it could also be named. This is what it would show up as in the sort and filter sheet. And so if we now try and go into sort and filter update, select the sort and filter mode, we're going to do this third one, sort and filter for solution prep. And do 3, click OK. It's going to run. And now you'll see under each of the unique chemicals, so for HCl, you'll see HCl 6 molar concentration for prep. And so Vanessa and I did go through and manually check the math on this to get a proof. So this is the amount of 6 molar HCl that you would need to make for all of these different concentrations, including the 6 molar. So if you were to make 3.2 liters of 2 molar HCl, 6.4 liters of 1 molar, and all these other concentrations at those quantities, you'd still have at the end 2.9 liters of 6 molar HCl. And this goes for NaOH as well. As you can see, it's only NaOH 1.5 molar. And that is because it's set up with the assumption that you want to use the highest concentration that you're going to use that semester. So if you were going to use a 6 molar HCl, it would make this be a 6 molar NaOH, it would make this be 6 molar. If you weren't using 1.5, it would then assume that 0.4 would be the highest concentration that you're making. So that's just something to keep in mind. So same thing in here as since there's only one concentration for the nitric acid, it's still going to make this little cheat sheet for you, but it's going to be the same thing as the original. But that's just an additional functionality of being able to have in one place that does all the math for you when making solutions, the ability to know how much you need to make of the highest concentration to make it easier on you. Let's see, what's something else I updated? So just remember, it would be good if you added molar mass to all of the different solutions or all of the different chemicals. Make sure you have the molarity for all the chemicals that we buy in a concentration, especially if we dilute it. If we dilute it and we don't have this concentration that we purchase it in, then that would create problems for the inventory tracking. I would also highly recommend minimizing the amount of different names that you use. So for example, we have ethanoic acid, acetic acid, 17.4 molar. I would try to make it so it's all either acetic acid. I don't know where ethanoic acid is coming from. Acetone 40%, that's okay. Acetone reagent grade, maybe that's just can be an extra note. Just minimizing the amount of situations we have like that. And then another situation of just being consistent is like for this lead 2 nitrate, sometimes we use lead 2 nitrate, sometimes we use PbNO3, PbNO3 I would say it would be for the best if we kept that consistent, because if that were the case, then these two would be the exact same because they're exact same concentration. And then that way they would show up uniquely on here and they would add it all up for you. So they wouldn't come as two separate entities. So being consistent is the name of the game to make your life easier. of using as few names as possible and the most preferred name. Same thing with magnesium strips and Mg strips. Same thing goes. It would be ideal if those were the same. And then using percentages versus molarity, because the calculations in here are for molarity, it would be best if everything was in molarity. There are a couple situations where I have already gone in and found a situation where there was a percent. Let's say, let's find an example. Maybe it's in 12. Oh yeah, here's one. So HCl, this was HCl 10%, but just to make it easier on ourselves, in the calculations, I turned it into HCl 3.24 molar, which is the equivalent of 10%, and then just put that little label over here if we want to just remember that we're putting HCl 10% on the label. But ideally, this would be sucrose and then whatever the molarity of 2% is. That would be ideal if you change that, because it just makes it easier for the calculations. I did check, and percentages should still work. Like for this iodine solution, it should still translate that percentage into grams. Like it would translate 5.5% to 100% and make that the grams. So it would divide whatever that 0.5% solution value was, like how much we used of it, and it would divide it by 200 and then put it into grams. And then that way we have the accurate accounting of how many grams of iodine solution we're using. So the percentages should still work, and sometimes you can see that we have a percent and a molarity for the same chemical, and it should still work. But like I said, consistency will just make it so that it's less likely for things to break. So try to just put everything in molarity. I think it would be simpler and easier for everyone. Another functionality I added was so that we could track things like buffers, or I believe, well, so let's go into 151. There was a situation that we were working on today, my last day. I'm gonna miss all of you guys, but so here's one where I'm assuming that this buffer, we weren't really able to store this into the inventory as is, because that's a little complicated. So what I did was, instead of having two spaces back here and storing it as a chemical, I am not having two spaces, and I'm putting an asterisk. And in the previous training, I said, try not to put asterisks or things like that in here, like fresh. You want to keep outside as a separate note. But in this instance, this would be the only case, and I feel like would be a good key to have, that the only instance where you're going to have an asterisk in this area of there being chemicals would be to indicate that it is a solution that requires multiple chemicals in our inventory that we then want to monitor the status of. And so what I've done is I added this asterisk, and I added this little section in notes called solution prep and tracking. And so I had the asterisk of what this buffer is. And this is not only good for being able to track it in the inventory, but it is also a way for you to know how to make these certain things. I actually didn't know what the situation was for this buffer, if it was a 1-to-1 ratio. This could be wrong. This is just what I've put in for now. You can update it later. But I assumed that it was a 1-to-1 ratio of NH3 and NH4Cl. And so making sure that this is a ratio, this is the amount that we are using per group, because that is how it's going to get pulled into the table. It's not going to automatically assume that you're making this in a batch and properly allocate that in the inventory. That's not a functionality that I had been able to make. So in this instance, you know you're going to make more than 5 milliliters of this solution for the entire class, but assume that these are the quantities of these chemicals that you need for each individual student. And then you can have this have a double space at the end of it. I don't know why this one didn't already. But yeah, you can have a double space at the end of it. And then these are going to get pulled into these data tables, which are also going to get pulled into the inventory. So they're actually going to be able to be tracked in our inventory automatically. So here is another example. Yeah, so here's the one that we were going through today, the iron 3 nitrate. And this is the ratio of iron 3 nitrate to nitric acid that we will use for making this iron 3 nitrate 0.2 molar. And like I said, I have a little asterisk here. There are no 2 spaces after it, so we are not tracking this exact value. What we are tracking are these 2 values down here with double spaces after them. And 10 grams of iron 3 nitrate. This is actually, I don't know if it's correct. This is just a random assumption. This probably isn't correct, but I do know that it is 60 milliliters of nitric acid that is going to be going into this solution for each student. Remember, it's going to be for each group in this value here, and that's how it's going to be properly tracked. And my misspeaking of per student versus per group does lead me into the next, and I believe last functionality that I have been able to make in this update. And that is, as you can see, group size is on each and every one of these prep sheets. And so essentially what I have been able to do is this way, not only do you know that, okay, this is a group of size 2 for all of these labs, because we are currently considering making more Chem 150 labs individual. But if we were to go to something like the practical, lab practical serial dilutions, this is going to be a group size of 1. And so this group is going to be a size of 1. And so to properly demonstrate that, and actually let me update these right now because this was under the previous assumption that it was always by 2. So each individual, in this case, because it's an individual, a group size of 1, this is going to be, you're going to want 2 cuvettes per student and 25 mils of blue dye stock. And then if we were also to go to the Chem Practical titrations, each student gets 50 milliliters of NaOH and 25 milliliters of HCl. And now this will be properly allocated because we have a group size of 1 here. And the formula, if we then go into updating updating the tables in this sheet, now these are going to be properly allocated. So this was doubled before, which it was incorrect. So now for the lab practical titrations, this is the correct amount of a class size. This is always going to assume a class size of 32, whether you have a group size of 2, 3, doesn't matter. It's going to take the class size and divide it by whatever this group size is to calculate this class size. And I set the group size as 32 because that you will likely never have a group size, a class size greater than 30, but this also gives you that little bit of an extra buffer that we like to have in the lab, making sure that, you know, if there was a spill or something like that, we would still have enough for every single lab where students were coming back and grabbing more than they needed to, or more than they should, or more that we're allocating them, then we're still covered for that amount of solution. So yeah, just know that it's always going to be out of 32, but if it's a group size of 32, or if it's a group size of 2, it's going to multiply this group value by 16 because 32 divided by 2 is 16. That's the amount of groups there are in a class. However, if it is a group size of 1, it's going to multiply this group size value by 32. Yeah, is that correct? Yep, that is correct. And I just proved it in front of you guys. So it was going to take this value and multiply it by 32 because it's an individual lab as determined by the value in this cell. If we were to then change it to being a group lab for some reason and wanted it to be a group lab for the lab practical titrations, we again update the sheet or the prep sheets tables. It's going to run. And as we can see, it has halved these because the groups have doubled, or the group sizes have doubled from an individual to a group size of 2. And so now it is automatically regenerating the amount that you need to make. So then if we were to go back, set it to being an individual lab as it is, you can do that for any of these labs. Just make sure it is in this exact cell. And then you can go in and update the tables in the sheet. And it'll take a second, but then it will update this to be correctly multiplied by an individual lab, so by 32. So one last thing is, if you did want to move where this group size value is, like say you wanted to move it over here, or up in the top right corner, or really wherever, that is okay. However, you will need to do something to make that change. If you wanted to do it that way, and frankly, I actually kind of like it being up here better, but yeah, so for the sake of an example, if we say wanted to move the group size up to the top right corner for just visual purposes, just know that we will need to do that for every single lab, which is okay because that will be out of the way in every instance of other situations that are happening. So let's now just do, let's copy these just to make it quicker. Go through, moving it up there. And I will go in and set it to being in there in the top right corner for every single course. So yeah, let's make sure that, okay, this is a group size of 1. And then let's go in and delete all of these. So we're not going to need those. This is also a group size of 1. The rest are group sizes of 2. I did break this border, which is going to bother me with the visuals. All right, so I have now fixed that. All right, so now we have this group size of 2. Okay, we moved it. What happens if I were to just, run this update tables and sheet without doing anything else? Missing group size for lab 1, check layout. And that is what this error means is the formula was assuming that the group, like all these other ones, is right here. So why is it assuming that? And it is because of this value up here in H2. So what this is the group size label location in first sheet. And so the group size label location for all these other ones is V48. So we go to column V, number 48, that is right here, group size. That is what group label size label means. So that is what this label is. The function is grabbing the value to the right of it. So do always make sure that that's something that I wasn't able to give you the ability to change, is it's always going to be, the group size needs to be to the right, the actual number of it. But this value, V48, is what's determining where the group size is. And unfortunately, I also didn't, that would have been a lot to try to give it so that you can move it around for every single lab individually. But just know that if you were to put this, wherever you put this group size, it needs to be in that exact same place for every single sheet. So just make sure it's out of the way. But all you have to do, so if we were to now go into 150 and we wanted it to work, so we'll dismiss this error. Instead of V48, the group size label location in first sheet is now in Z46. So let's change this to Z46. And now let's do update tables in sheet. Almost done.
Are you still recording?
Yeah.
Hey, Matt, can I ask you a question?
Yes, you can.
On the inventory sheet, can we add columns?
Yes. Yes, you can.
We just cannot remove columns.
Oh, wait, no. Yeah. Yes, you can add columns. Just don't remove columns. I was thinking rows for a second. What type of columns?
We're thinking about adding some hazard information about the chemicals.
Yeah.
So if you yeah, so does that sound like something that we could, it kind of looks like this, where we have some reactivity numbers, some GHSI numbers.
Oh, yeah.
So see, but we don't want to make two different lists.
Yeah.
If we can just add columns to this one.
You totally can add columns. So I made it. So I made this. So hide these columns. I made this, the functions, to be able to look for instances where it says name.
Okay.
So just be careful, be cognizant of what you name each of these columns. So
Just
this
don't
is,
name it name.
yeah, so this is what the header it's considered. It's this row 6. So
Yeah.
don't move the header into a different row. But yeah, just don't name it, like have name in it. And then it's also looking for instances of 3 numbers starting in this column of AO. So I would recommend adding anything to the end. If you were to have a new course, you'd want to add the column within here and then add the 3 numbers of, like, say it was a 250 class, you'd want it in there. And then, you know, if you were to add that sheet down here, like if you were to duplicate that and then name it Chem 250 and make it a whole new prep sheet, it would, you know, work seamlessly.
Okay, but here,
If
like
you're-
after the all names column is what we're thinking, we could
Yeah.
add like 3 columns and it would be fine.
Yeah, it wouldn't
Okay.
change anything.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Oh, and it seems like I removed the notes for some reason. All right. So now where was I? I was in 150. And now, yeah, running this function was able to work. Update tables in sheet, because I properly allocated the group size label location in the first sheet right there, and I maintained the pattern throughout. So it runs, it finished script, and it went perfectly fine. So now what were to happen if I were to move this down there? And so now it's inconsistent. It doesn't do the same thing across all of the prep sheets. Now, if I do this again, I run the prep sheets. Missing group size for lab 2, check the layout. Again, that's because it's inconsistent. And if we were to move this back so that it's consistent, we dismiss this error, update tables, it'll run perfectly fine. So this way, if you were to say make a bunch of the labs within 150 or in 210 or something like that, and you were to make them individual labs, you can just set this value to 1, and you know it'll allocate the chemicals properly. In 140, if you make like the wine lab group sizes of 3, you can set that to 3, and it'll work seamlessly just as well. I do not believe, I think that is the last thing I was able to change. Like I said, I'm going to set the group size to being in the top right corner because I think it's the least cluttered, and that way you don't have to change it as much. But yeah, feel free. Manessa has my phone number to give me a text if you guys have any questions. I can't promise a quick reply, as you know, considering my schedule, but I am very happy to help out and make sure that this is usable as long as possible and makes your lives as easy as possible. That was the goal with this whole project. Anyways, yeah, it's been a pleasure working with you guys, and I hope that this is very helpful. All right. I'm gonna end the presentation now.